sits there.
Oh, thank you.
Microphone's off.
Okay.
So we'll get it.
That's a lot to do, When you're all by yourself.
Oh, it is. It's just as hard for them if they were by themselves too.
Really?
Have a sit. It would be.
Really?
It's just not an easy job.
Okay.
It really isn't.
No, I'm not supposed to play
But
with
it's fun. You can run around. You can play with it for a bit till you get it right.
Okay, thanks.
It's just when you buy new stands and you see people coming along and they just, I want to make sure that's going to be tight because the one I used 5 years ago wasn't.
Yeah, horrid. His nuts were all worn down.
It takes a pair of pliers to undo it, and then you wonder why it won't ever do up again.
That's right, you do.
See, those work really well, those shells. The
I like
Circus
those.
of Words tonight.
Circus of Words.
Yes.
Oh, you're changing the name? Because
No.
Mark wasn't happy with flow because he thinks it denotes the feminine too much. Flow thing. But that's just Mark. Well, that's your wife. That's a woman saying that.
Flowing. I know the feeling. I don't know the feeling, but I've had to live with the feeling.
She does a lot with the reproductive system, though, when you think about it.
Who did this
That's
one up?
one of her
Jesus
themes. I didn't do
Christ.
that. That's right.
Flow. Hey, where's the?
The? Who's the?
Like, for the love of words.
Where is the?
Why do you
Meaning-
just get flow? Why does of get in there?
Oh,
and
I
not-
see. The THE isn't in there, yeah. For the low.
Flow.
Yeah.
Flow. I like word flow. It works.
They often leave prepositions out of anachronisms, don't they?
Hey, Jason. You just came in. You know tonight's spoken word, eh?
Oh,
yeah.
darn. Sorry,
It's
Jason.
not open mic. But it's okay. You got things to say.
You could do your song lyrics. You write songs? Oh, okay.
Does on piano.
Oh,
Does
nice.
a lot of piano stuff.
Yeah,
I found him outside one day playing the piano.
Oh.
And it was getting really cold, and really cold. I said, "You better come in and check this one out." So we
Yeah.
had much better time. So he's actually playing here on February 11th,
Nice.
Sunday afternoon.
February 11th.
Is it 11th? The 16th, exactly. The 16th. Yeah, see, he knows. That's why it's
Yeah.
always good to do that. Put something out, a mistake to see if they're actually listening.
That's right. That's good. That's a way to sharpen it up, yeah.
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 How you been?
Good. I'm so excited about the new truck, and I had dinner the other night with my friend Mark Primer and showed him my big silver box, and he was impressed.
Good.
Yep. Weren't you,
would-
Mark? Good. It's a box.
It's the long box.
Yeah, I know it's the wrong time ecologically, and John, you will tell me this, to get a 350 and a
No, a
3/4 ton,
350 is perfect.
I want to go to Whitehorse to see my brother in August and do a little job, so I think I needed a road warrior that I could count on, that I could work on.
There, Luc DeVille.
Luke, yeah?
He just he was here playing a while ago, a friend of Tim's,
Uh-huh.
and he just 3 weeks ago he sent me a picture of the one he just bought, another '89 GMC.
Ooh.
Only it's the van, same as mine.
Right,
right?
right.
And they're starting to show up more and more, and they are pretty dependable because it's a 350. Like I got an extra 350s. It wasn't the engine that went
Yeah.
in my other one; it was something else. But now I got an engine. I got two engines. I got two 350s.
Ooh.
One partially rebuilt.
Partially rebuilt.
You would
That's
never see that in a new car.
No, you wouldn't, no.
Hi, I got a partially rebuilt electric motor.
Yeah, no, you're
No.
hooped. You're
George is
really-
showing me a picture of what it is that runs your car.
What is it?
Not very much.
A module?
Well, the battery isn't all that big.
Interesting.
If any mechanic looks at it and has to figure out what to do, it's like, what?
I know we're in dire times, but what about the slaves for lithium? John, what's the answer? We'll ask you later. Yeah, there's no real good, clean answer right now. Hopefully there's some good. Isn't it lithium that they have to mine?
Yeah, but
Let's
it's one of
not
the
get
things they
too
have to
political.
mind. But they weren't. They're learning. We're learning. We're a slow learning society.
Slow
But,
learning society. Well, that's the trouble. The
Civilization, I should say.
civilization is crashing, and we are slow learners. Yeah,
No, society's clashing.
society. Yeah.
Civilization is going along just the way it was. They showed some pictures the other day of all these castles and houses and cars
Yeah.
and stuff like that where vegetation is just taken over.
Mm-hmm.
It comes back in and you don't see them hardly ever more because the vegetation just says, out of my way.
Well, they're too hard to keep up, I suppose. Castles, aren't they?
And cars, old cars that are sitting,
Old cars,
trees
yeah.
grow out and throughout it. Like what I'm saying is that nature will take over
Yes, it will.
long after we're here,
Well,
long
I
after
hope-
we're gone.
I hope we get washed off the big globe soon, because we're just making a mess of it. So Yeah, I'm happy with that something will return.
But don't take it personal.
Ants, rats, what? The coronavirus will be king. Yeah, good. Does that have 2 legs or 4? 8 legs. See, that's way
Don't you
better.
use limes with that?
What does?
Don't you eat a lot of limes with that?
Coronavirus? I suppose you do. Yeah. Hi, folks. Did you come in to
Are
read?
you part of the worst day, or are you just hanging out? I know she's coming on Friday night. Bonnie's coming on Friday night
Nice.
to catch the blues show. She might be here to buy tickets for that right now. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
go ahead, yeah.
But tonight is For the Love of Words, and it's our great host, our one and only host.
Whoa, the one and only, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a couple of co-hosts.
Yes, they didn't
Yeah.
work well.
Really? You're saying that with John in the room? That's kind of mean.
I'm also. Who else was here? Who else has done it?
Who else? Not Mark. Somebody else. Andrew did. I thought Andrew did well.
Andrew did
Yeah.
well. Where's Andrew now?
Well, that's not the point.
It's just a
Anyway,
point.
I'm
It's not
surprised.
the point. It's a point.
A point. I guess you can pick on John that way because you like him and you're good friends.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that a necessity for picking on someone? You got to like them first.
Well, you don't want to offend somebody too badly, do you? Why not? That's a good question, John. That's right. Are you a Don Rickles or are you a...
Don was very endearing.
He was, yes, he had a good heart. So in the
Yeah.
end, he would just needle you and then he'd love you,
Yeah.
which is kind of like foreplay, I guess. The needling's foreplay.
Mark must be in the room.
Mark, speaking of foreplay, that's right.
Take it away, Mr. Bill Levity.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, that was host and host time, John, for those of you who are wondering. So now I'll begin as a reader. And yes, we have been here 12 years. This is not a finished poem. But when you're sitting around and you put lyrics to established songs. And really, I was writing because it was the Harry and Meghan thing. Is that her name? Which, what a shit show. If they want to try and have normal lives, good luck. Of course, they probably still are rich. But they will never have privacy. Steadfast and strong and free. This is to the tune of God Save the Queen. This is our anarchy. God help the Queen. Long she's reigned over us, bulbous, vainglorious. Thus falls the Queen. Where was she when they made the poison blankets in this land? Where was she when they took away the land? Forced the Queen to make a stand on human rights. She's just too darn old for that. Anyway, I didn't finish the one about the Queen. I'm not sure how I feel about the Queen, really. Well, that's what I'm thinking. If I met her, we'd probably have a great time. We'd have a couple cocktails. I'd be flirting with her. It'd be a different story. Where is this poem? Oh, I don't think I read this one last time. This is near and dear to my heart because when you try and enter the dating pool again at 60, it's just a whole different ball game, isn't it? I have no idea how to behave, really. I know how to misbehave. I just don't know how to behave. I've always been carnally opposed to dog hair on women, as if they'd already made their choice. And I'm not about to share a bed with you and Bowser. For a while, I could view it as natural selection. These women are not for me, I reasoned. That makes my dating choices clearer. There's dog hair on your pants, I noticed, the lady ahead of me. I move on. No judgment. We're just in different camps. I'm not just a slob in a dress, I'd say to her. I'm a freak in a tutu. Don't forget that. A giant black, hairy curled poodle. Curled hairy, how do you say that? Black, curly-haired poodle. Who does not want to share you with a cute canine? Where's my ducky lucky Lou? Who's my good boy? Come give mommy a kiss. I want you to talk to me like that. Damn it. I want Billy treats. I want to lay at your feet and be tickled by your toes. Take a toes. It's me or Bowser. One of us has got to go. See, you can imagine how far I'll get with that. Yeah. I'm sure women, being sensible creatures, would much be better off to choose their dog over a guy like me. Anyway. Oh, I thought maybe this could explain it. Because I wonder why are some people alone and some people in couples? And I got to learn more about the wolf. But here, Sunshine Fox posted this. Does anybody know her? She's a painter. Somehow we ended up friends in that Facebook realm. Talented painter from Yubo. The wolf. The wolf brings forth instinct, intelligence, appetite for freedom, and awareness. Also, the importance of social connections. The wolf can symbolize fear of being threatened and lack of trust. Oh my God, that is my problem. When the wolf shows up in your life, pay attention. There you go, something to think about for spring. All right, and I have one more for you, a cover poem or a cover song. I'll read it, and then someone may win a prize for guessing who wrote it. Oy. I'm traveling in some vehicle. I'm sitting in some cafe, a defector from the petty wars that shell-shock love away. There's comfort in melancholy when there's no need to explain. It's just as natural as the weather in this moody sky today. In our possessive coupling, so much could not be expressed. So now I'm returning to myself, these things that you and I suppressed. I see something of myself in everyone, just at this moment of the world, as snow gathers like bolts of lace, waltzing on a ballroom girl. You know it has never been easy, whether you do or you do not resign, whether you travel the breadth of extremities or stick to some straighter line. Now here's a man and a woman sitting on a rock. They're either going to thaw out or freeze. Listen, there's strains of Benny Goodman coming through the snow and the pinewood trees. I'm porous with travel fever. But you know, I'm so glad to be out on my own. Still somehow, the slightest touch of a stranger can set up trembling in my bones. I know, no one's going to show me everything. We all come and go unknown, each so deep and superficial between the forceps and the stone. Well, I looked at the granite markers, those tributes to finality, to eternity, and then I looked at myself here, chicken scratching for my immortality. In the church, they light the candles, and the wax rolls down like tears. There's the hope and the hopelessness I've witnessed for these 30 years. We're only particles of change, I know, orbiting around the sun. But how can I have that point of view when I'm always bound and tied to someone? White flags of winter chimneys waving truce against the moon in the mirrors of a modern bank from the window of a hotel room. I'm traveling in some vehicle. I'm sitting in some cafe, a defector from the petty wars until love sucks me back that way. That's not a bad guess. Any other guesses? Einodge. What is that? Is that a Einodge? Oh, he's right. Yes. John gets and the prize is just that we say that you get the Smart Award. Joni Mitchell, of course. Hiera. Is that how you say that word? Hiera? Hegira, right. And what is Hegira? It's a place. It's the name of a horse. It's a flower. I don't know. Anyway, welcome. For those of you who have not been here before, maybe there's one or two, and somebody just came in who might want to read. Oh, there's people. Hi. Oh, good. I can't see who you are, but I'll come and connect with you in a minute. John, come on. I know you're just champing at the bit to read. Okay. I was going to say to people, it's basically a 5-minute format-ish, and you can do anything you want except express hate literature, I think is our rule. Oh, John, there's a weird thing on the stage. I don't know if you want to touch
A weird thing on the stage. That's anything new here? Right. I understand from professional direction that I need to speak directly into the microphone. Is that correct? Thank you, sir. George Ade, A-D-E, was born sometime in the late 1800s, and he worked as a columnist in a Chicago newspaper. Christ, these lights are bright. Good Lord. Just need to get off the stage. One of the features of high myopia, which is me, is that we are very sensitive to light. So just can't deal with it. My eyes get flooded with that high energy. So George Ade, A-D-E, and he, about 1900, he published a little book called Fables in Slang. And they're just short stories, vignettes, you might say, of American life, and each one had a little moral to it, like kind of after the model of Aesop's fables. I'll just get this thing open here if I can get in the right code. There we go. Okay, there's a couple of them that I read. They're both kind of along the lines of people who think they are artists, myself included. And this is the fable of Flora and Adolphe and a home gone wrong. Am I okay for volume here, folks? Yep, thank you. One morning, a modern Solomon, who had been chosen to preside as judge in a divorce mill, climbed to his perch and unbuttoned his vest for the wearisome grind. He noticed that the first case looming up on the docket was that of Flora Botts versus Adolphe Botts. The applicant, Mrs. Botts, and Adolphe, the other half of the domestic sketch, were already inside the railing, each attempting to look the other out of countenance. "Break," ordered the judge. "Don't act as if you were at home. Now, what has Adolphe been doing?" It seemed that she alleged cruelty, neglect, inhuman treatment, violent temper, threats, etc., etc. "We have no chills and fever music to lend effect to the sad narrative you are about to spring," said the judge, looking down at the plaintiff, who belonged to the peroxide tribe. "Furthermore, we will take it for granted that when you first met defendant, your innocence and youth made it a walk away for his soft approaches, and that you had every reason to believe that he was a perfect gentleman. Having disposed of these preliminaries, let us have the plot of the piece." So she told her story in a tremulous, Viola Allen kind of voice while her lawyer wept. I should mention that there's quite a number of late 1800s cultural references in here that probably aren't going to make much sense to any of us, but anyway, you'll get the point. Yes. So she told her story while her lawyer wept, and he was ready to weep for anyone who would hand him $8. Afterthought, make it $7.50, and I remember this is 1900. This is a dark tale of how Botts, the viperous defendant, had sneered at her, called her oh such names, humiliated her in the presence of callers, and nagged her with sarcastic comments until her tender sensibilities had been worn to a frazzle. Then the defendant went on the stand and entered a general denial. He had been all that a rattling good husband could be, but she had been a regular Rudyard Kipling vampire. She had continued to make his life one lingering day after of regret. His record for patience and long suffering had made Job's performance look like an amateur's half-try. "There is more in this case than appears on the surface," said the modern Solomon. "In order to fix the blame, we shall have to dig up the first cause. I will ask chemical Flora to tell us the story of her past life." "My parents were poor but refined," said Mrs. Botts. "They gave me every advantage. After I finished the high school, I attended a conservatory, and everyone said I had talent. I should have been an elocutionist. Once I went to Rockford and recited the tramp story at a club social, and I got a lovely notice. I am especially good at dialect recitations." "Humorous?" asked the court. "Yes, sir, but I can turn right around and be pathetic all of a sudden if I want to be." "I suppose that Botts, after he had lived with you a while, didn't have any hankering desire to hear you recite," suggested the modern Solomon. "That's just it, Your Honor. When I'd offer to get up in company and speak something, he'd ask me to please not to recite, and if I had to make a show of myself, for God's sake not to tackle anything humorous with a conservatory dialect to it. But you wouldn't let him stop you. Not on your life. I'd believe you even if you wasn't under oath. Now, will Mr. Botts answer me one question? Has he any ambition on the side?" And Mr. Botts replied, "Although I am a bookkeeper for a gravel roofing concern, I have always believed that I could write," replied Adolphe Botts. "About 4 years ago, I began to prepare the book for a comic opera. A friend of mine who works in a hat store was to compose the music. I think he has more ability than Victor Herbert." "Did this friend think well of your libretto?" asked the wise judge. "Yes, sir, it was the best thing that he had been done since Erminy. In fact, everybody liked my book." "Except your wife," suggested the court. "That's it exactly, Your Honor. I wanted sympathy and encouragement, and she gave me the metallic laugh. There was one patter song in my opera that everyone who comes to my house has been crazy to hear. Whenever I start to sing it, she would talk in a loud voice. She never seemed to appreciate my stuff. I think the bleach affected her head. Has the opera been produced? Asked the court with humane hesitancy. No, the Eastern managers were all tied up with Harry B. Smith, replied Mr. Botts, and there's a prejudice against Western talent. Well, Mr. Botts, in view of all the evidence, I have decided to give you a decree of divorce from flow of the wheaten tresses, said the modern Solomon. But look here, exclaimed the defendant, I haven't applied for any divorce. You don't have to, I give it to you anyway. As for you, Mrs. Botts, I will give you a decree also. The alimony will be $25 per. Thanks. I don't think you grasp the decision. When I say that the alimony is $25 per, I mean that Mrs. Botts will be required to pay that amount to Adolph every week. Shameful. Don't be so hasty. I further decree that Mr. Botts must pay the same amount to Flora every week. That simply makes it a standoff, remarked Mr. Botts, who was puzzled. My idea of the case neatly expressed, said the modern Solomon. Each of you is divorced from the other, and if either of you ever marries again, he or she will be jerked before this tribunal and sentenced to 10 years of hard labor in some penal institution. Whereupon the court took a noon recess of 3.5 hours. And the moral to this story is, genius must ever walk alone. Yeah, well, there's another little short one here.
Oh, that's good, John. You're over your 5 and 6 minutes, so that's very good.
Am I then? Well, you hard master, you.
No, you've inspired me.
You cruel bastard. This one is this one is a good footnote to that one.
Okay. Yes, we try to keep to a 5-minute thing just so everybody gets a chance and our ears are fresh. For listening is a bit of a skill. 2 others in this day and age? What's that?
Yeah.
Good? Okay.
This was my entry to an epic poem contest, and it doesn't fit the rules properly, so I don't think I ever actually entered it. But anyway, it's in Out of the Warm Land. It's called Homeless. Homeless sat on bare cement like trash, his shopping cart of beggar's art, his stash. Some doorway thrown he calls his own, ascend, and toque as crown, he'll rage you down, defend. A clean air stream, a warm, fresh dream floats out from beneath the door, across the floor without. On cardboard bed he lays his head, beside a scent of life that he has been denied. His realm a park, approaching dark he'll cruise. A drug exchange within his range, refuse. His search for ale, his holy grail, his quest, still on his feet, no bread, no meat, no rest. His treasure chests are trash in dark lanes. A tithe you pay this monarch for his righteous reign. He pushes shopping cart downtown and mines, and dumpster diving on his claim. He finds cans and bottles for his currency, some double shot espresso and ginseng tea. In upscale neighborhoods, it's rich debris. Too bad Starbucks cups are free. His toothless smile on traffic aisle befriends, predicts the end of business guile, defends. His grizzled face and bent back pace strike fear. And coins are tossed to him, but not from near, 'cause surely he contaminates our seer. A man who's less, dare we confess, not dear. His face, his speech, his moves demented seem. like all that passed his lips, fermented dreams. Sugar turned to alcohol makes one hazy. Homeless once was sane, but now judged crazy. A hero once, this father had a son. Old loves are lost. He thinks there can be none. A face arrives downtown East Side, a youth. A few coins left for food. He finds a booth. In greasy spoon, with low-life tune, he waits until his first withdrawal pains abate. A fix for free, he hopes, but thinks the worse. A high school bully boy he could coerce. So he takes his fear and pushes back to rage and thinks it's courage. Youth has no gauge. Bravado false, he struts in sweat-cold shirt, walks like a prince but thinks he might be dirt. The pavement, needle-strewn, speak to his cause. A huddle of the derelict give pause. Addiction is the beast within this cage. Entrance by outsiders prompts a rage. Beaten youth in rain weeps tears of red as wounds are trailing blood across his head. An empty space where his thoughts used to be. Survival instinct is reality. Youth finds a doorway, dry but occupied. A snoring heap of rags the other side. So huddles in the corner best to hide. A chance that he won't make it not denied. Sweet sleep has muffled all his body's screams. Escaping warmth imbues sweetened dreams. Two broken souls in close proximity. Enmesh, unconscious, dream reality. Then homeless wakes and agitates. A doorway crasher is what irritates. He rages to defy the lowly squat, and youth cringes to defy the onslaught. A moment's pause, a hand withheld this night. Homeless sees as if with second sight. Though mumbles, grumbles, cold ache of bone, he turns away and leaves poor youth alone. Memories of his own youth disguised, reflected in the young man's frightened eyes. He searches cart for secret hoarded crust he saved from last night's gospel sandwich bus. His toothless gnaw, repugnant to the kid, but homeless thought it envy, turned and hid. His meager meal, a feast for some, was savored while he planned his route. Which lane his chariot and he would ply, in which trash can would treasure lie, enough for food, perhaps a drink, some rum or whiskey, he drooled to think. Brown battered hat he tossed to the lad and bid him lead the doorway pad. Now cockeyed cartwheels clatter down the street, and the trio trudge the homeless beat. A corner to protest the passing bus. No public here for transit, was his cuss. Just him and me. We don't matter much. You wouldn't want to be so close we'd touch. He raises up his fist to gazing eyes of office workers in their office work disguise. Their iPods, cell phone, BlackBerry ball and chain. And he shouts, who's crazy and who's sane? And you says, man, word up, you got that right. But alley groups remind him of his plight, and homeless sees the demon seed inside that worms its way through youth, a gathering tide. You holding out? Got cash? He asked the kid. Forget it, move your ass, he said. Youth did. So lord and squire and four-wheeled steed trot down to overpass, a cardboard mattress town, where ragged wraiths and those in need so dire could congregate in warmth beside a fire. Broken furniture fuel, they burned the least of what was required to cook this beast. A goose, it seemed, turned by two at post to protect this meat, 10 this valued roast. And homeless strikes a bargain up, a contribution guaranteeing sup, and cans and bottles turned in for cash bought bread and fruit, not rum, depletes his stash. They supped like kings, the pair beneath the bridge, and slept on cardboard meant to pack a fridge. 6 nights and days, the youth and homeless slept, on doorway thrown drug-free, and friendship kept. And on the 7th, homeless said goodbye to this young man. He bid him now to fly away, build a life while young and free. Cash for the bus, a gift. Youth did agree. Go home, seek a different dream. Reject the pain, remember all you've seen. Community appears in every place. To find it for yourself, you turn and face that needles are a shortcut to the grave, and keeping straight's the work that takes the brave. Our homeless hero contrasts dark and light. Your world isn't better when he's out of sight. Don't give in to judgment without a fight, and say a prayer for him at sleep tonight. Okay. Well, there's 6 more lines. Repelled, we turn aside, refuse to see, but for the grace of God, he could be me. A sideways slip, a loosened grip, a fall. A paycheck from the edge describes us all. A bitter fight, adulterous night, some sin that undermines our faith and sends us in to suffer depths of pain. No end in sight prepares a sidewalk bed for us tonight.
Yes, I hope that didn't seem rude. It's a bit of a trick as a host to encourage people to keep their pieces to a length where it's complementary to the whole evening, so that we all have attention for each other. And as I say, it's a bit of an art to sit for 2 hours and just listen. So that's my motivation in having a time space. So if you've got a long piece, if it's a novel or a short story, please consider doing an excerpt, which is just as effective and kind of will compel people to ask you about your piece. Anyway, it's all a learning curve. Let's see, Gord, you got something for us? I see Mr. Miller has come in. Hello, Biron.
How does that sound? I'm going to read some quotations from The Wine Writer, a book by John Merlot. He writes for the Hidden Wine Region Review. I would rather drink 3 bottles of yellow Chardonnay than die 1,000 deaths, said Gerald Francier, president of the Peterborough Vanilla Extract Corporation, on being presented evidence that some Chardonnays contain vanilla extract. Well, I wish I had never started injecting Chianti. I couldn't help it. I've never cared for how dry it is. That was Jamie Seville at his 2003 trial, when he admitted being in possession of a case of Ilio Chianti Primato, that had fallen off a truck at a highways department's workyard. Some people who throw big parties worry about not having enough wine. I worry about not having too little. Mrs. Anton de Santonikov was the guest speaker at the Hidden Wine Region Review annual meeting. I would prefer to have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. That was attributed to W.C. Fields. Yeah, that's an old one. I keep hearing this joke. If you play rap music backwards, you get your gun back, you get your drugs back, you get out of jail, and so on, and then I think, well, rap music is already backwards. You can never read too many wine reviews. And here's one called Two Horsetails. Might just have time with one for one. Some people who like wine like horses, and vice versa. If you're spending the day relaxing with friends and have just decanted your favorite Gilliam's Rare Rougeoir or a 1979 Deflecto Corluge, you may be inspired to relate stories of your past adventures and bravado. If your own experiences are unsuitable for company or embarrass you, feel free to tell the following tales. The making of a cowboy. Over the years, I have earned a collection of horse tales, courtesy of several resorts and guest ranches that have graciously hosted me. In the Limestone Mountains, several greenhorns and I rode from a small guest ranch to a mountain peak and back. We returned at night, and if you think horses are just dumb animals, think again. The lead rider's horse became so spooked by a large rock reflecting the moonlight that he pranced and danced until one old guy threatened to shoot him. Finally, he calmed down, and the horse did too. My mount, an old cayuse, nursed a grudge against me and tried to rub me off on every tree we passed. Well-bashed and mulched knees are not funny no matter how much medicinal wine is absorbed. The best lesson I had learned in a long time came later on a ride across a recently logged hillside. My horse was a good one this time, and to communicate just how good he was, he demonstrated his ability to stop on a dime and give change. Car designers would not go wrong studying that horse's braking system. I rocketed straight off Mr. Hayburner into a one-point landing on my backside. The son of a stud stood there with an innocent grin. "What you doing down there, fella?" he seemed to say. Back at the ranch house, I mentioned to Minto, our wrangler, how his excellent horse broadened my horsemanship and bruised my pride. "Well," Minto said dryly, 6 more times and you'll be a real cowboy." I was absolutely thrilled. Last little excerpt here, called In Those Stunning Mountains. In those stunning mountains, beyond the beyond of the gorgeous Blackwater country, I had the honor of riding with a distinguished group of adventurers. My mount was a dashing, well-trained, spirited creature who responded to the slightest lay of the reins upon his neck. By now I had learned the hang of horses, I was sure. The next day our wrangler preempted my mount and assigned me a Welsh pony, an astounding individual. We rode, and I, of course, being an accomplished horseman, applied my usual neck rein style. However, despite the laying on of reins all about his neck, Welsh he did as he pleased and plodded straight ahead, laughing inside at the greenhorn who fancied himself an experienced horseman with the neck-reining bit. Welshie was his own horse, I could see. To turn him, you gotta yank his head back to his arse, someone yelled. Oh, so that's how you do it. I managed to drag his head back to his rump, causing a light to come on in his head. Problem solved. That was dang near as much fun as the time we rode into that nest of wasps. On another occasion, I rode to town with our guide, Phil, to pick up supplies. At a stream, Phil's horse balked and danced around, determined not to cross. Seems he had seen his own reflection in the water. Phil climbed out of the saddle, stood at the horse's left flank, and lay on it a severe fist-pounding, causing me to laugh so hard I came mighty close to falling off my own mount. Phil climbed back in the saddle and spurred the horse, who calmly trotted through the stream as if to say, "What's the problems, dude?" During that same trip, I got into serious trouble when I let loose the remuda. It was the second time in my life I did that. Thank you.
So I must say in my own defense that, we've been doing this for 12 years. And in about the second year, I think we were at the garage, the original garage building. And we had a very full evening. And there was a female author with a very famous last name who came up and did a short story that lasted about 20 minutes. And it was very, it just stalled the evening. And a few people left. And I was like a deer in the headlights. I just really couldn't move. I literally became frozen to my spot. So hopefully in these days I can handle those things delicately. Oh my God, that's huge. Then I make the diatribe and somebody comes up with the very thing. So if you've got a bunch of material, you might want to sit at home and practice and see how long it takes, because we're only here once a month. Lillian, where are you from?
I'm from Nanaimo.
Ooh, a foreigner.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, welcome. Did you want to stand?
Yeah.
You prefer?
Yeah, I prefer to stand. Yeah. Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. My name's Lillian. I'm a retired midwife, and over the years, I read a lot of literature and poetry and various things about birth, and this was the best thing ever, I thought, that was written about birth. It was written by Lillian Allen, a Jamaican-Canadian dub poet. So I apologize beforehand for my Jamaican accent, but it has to be in there. So it's called Birth Poem. This little girl me call Anta. This little girl me call Anta. This little girl me call Anta. Ah-ha-ha, ah-ha-ha, ah-ha. Me pregnant in me belly and me head full of jelly and me vomit and me sleep and me tired and me eat and me vomit and me sleep and me sigh. Lord, Jah alone know, Jah alone know. Me never know say it so rough, we never know say it so tough. And this little girl, she wouldn't come the second before she ready fe born. And the months them passed and me out view lost. And me labor 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 and me bawl, why? This little girl, she wouldn't come a second before she ready fe born. And me labor 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 and me labor. And it hurt, you see, and it dread, you see. And me labor 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 and me bawl, why? And me push 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 and baps, she born. And it nice, you see, and she sweet, you see. Sweet, 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 sweet. This little girl we call Anta. This little girl we call Anta. This little girl we call Anta. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
I say that with the fondest remembrance. My friend, Mr. Nicholas Bouchard. Also a thespian of note. Well, not so much in the last years, but you used to thespian a lot, didn't you?
I did. I thespianed. I admit it. I'm guilty. Pound at the pines, all that. I think I'll do something different than I was planning. Today it was interesting. I was listening on CBC radio, and they were some fellow was being interviewed about India and about poetry, and I just thought it was so wonderful. And he said, the thing about poetry in India, it's not about the words, it's actually about the sounds. And I think, the sounds, what do you mean? You go, and he went on to say, it's about the vibration, it's about the creation. And I went, wow, that's just so immense, that's so wonderful. Okay, so that takes me back to a poem that I know. And why I love this poem is because it's the first time I ever heard words used in a way that moved me right to my very core. And so I learned it and I remembered it. And I still remembered it. I learned it on a fishing boat with a diesel motor humming in the background all summer long. So this is how the poem goes. It's actually 22 minutes. No, Bill, I'm not going to do the whole thing. It took a whole summer to learn. But I'll do the end part of it. And I think right now it's relevant to me because there's talk of war and the usual distractions that take us away from what's really valuable, which is each other and ourselves. Let's speak now of master builders who lived long ago. It was no wretched peasantry chasing the scrawny cows that raised the hollow hills and hedgestones, but calm, cunning wizards worked those wonders. One finger, one foot, plying their wares westward to the Americas, home of the Aztecs, Incans, and Mayans, while mothers washed their babies in the seas of time. And that has always been so. But what I hate are the scribblers who only write of war and leave the glories of the past unsung between the lines, but sadly and cruelly on the sinister left hand. The tale of man since the dawning of time has been of groaning, croaking wars, long before Caesar's lawful butchers. To the flaxen-haired Saxons laying flame to thatch, our ringlet Vikings twirling blood-white axes, or the courtly Normans cutting off of hands, and the burning church and its partners prick, while peasants munch their meat, growing to fear the spirit is the one life for all. But long, long ago, before we ever took names like English, or Irish, or Scottish, or Welsh, and long before the Tower of Babel fell and language cracked, there was interchange and harmonies and conversations upon this world. And monuments stand from the Americas to Egypt, from China to this green isle, set like a gem on a cold North Sea. Well, slightly more glib now when I think back to that summer's day when I opted out on my history English lesson for skinny dipping in the river. It was there that the spirits descended upon me, restless in my life and seeking no end in death. And as I laid myself in that hot spring sunshine to dry, I closed my eyes, and in the distance I could hear a cat's low, while the wild bees hummed.
everybody. Great start. Wow. Well, I'll go get the tea guy. Hold on. Oh, are you here? I didn't see you. Your chance to tell us about yourself. Thanks for it. Good stuff. What do you mean you're moving? What do you mean? Really? Right, we're not hurrying, but we do often go to the brew pub later, and they have 2-for-1 or half-price appies. So we sit as a group and we eat appies and we talk about stuff. Come on up, Richie. And what is your Richie? Richie's good. Richie's good. Yeah, we won't give the famous last name. How's that? You know how to work a mic.
I do know how to work a mic. Yeah. I'm a musician, and that's actually where my content is coming from. It's a relatively short song. Well, not like the 8-minute songs I played for LJ. It's a little shorter than that. I was looking through I was thinking for a whole day actually what content I was going to do here, and how I arrived at this content, which is the song that I wrote about 10 years ago, 9-10 years ago, was because it meant something to me. It's full of passion. And it's a little on the prurient side, so that's why it's in the second half. So you're warned. If you might have to close your ears. It's called Accelerate. And well, for John Hadfield's benefit, he's broken the ice for me actually with some of his content. So I don't feel quite so reticent about sharing this content after hearing John's. Holy cow. Hopefully he'll share some after. Anyway, Accelerate. You accelerate my particles, put me in a state. My electrons are all firing, too much on my plate. I am you, baby. Come dance with me. What I really want, I won't really say. You connect me with my essence. Vibrate me with my soul. I know I'm going somewhere, just don't know how. In the land of my dreams, whoa, you take me to bed. Gently turn me over. Start to give me sledgehammer awakenings. You rock my soul. The way you shake those boobs. Could there be anything more? You excite me beyond reason. Take me to another place. I'm open for you, honey. Oh, be my date. Be my date. The way you turn those hips, invite me inside, the sensuality you ooze, glazed over eyes. Be my F-doll. Yeah, be my F-doll right now. Be my F-doll. I'll be yours. I'll be yours. Ooh, accelerate. Ooh, accelerate. Be my F-doll. I haven't played that for a few years. Oh, actually, what I should have had was that I used to play under contract. I had an agent, a booking agent, and the club owner said, if you play that song, I'm going to cancel your contract. And I asked the fans that were there, they knew that I played this, and they'd show up regularly. And I asked them, do you want me to play this? They said, yeah. So I played that, and that was the last time I played in that club.
Oh no, sex has reared its ugly head. It's going downhill from here, I know. Well, it's a question, isn't it? We are an adult format, so we don't intend to offend. I think we were talking about that, Mark and I. Come on up, Mark. We had a lovely couple, David and what was his wife's name? Right, and they would bring her mom, and he was just a wonderful writer. He was writing about his adventures with the that core of Doctors Without Borders. Thank you, Andrew. But probably very spiritual people and not used to hearing about other sex lives. So we take a bit of a chance, but we are an open format.
Sometimes we lose them.
Sometimes we lose them. How are you, sir? Mark Primer.
I'm good, thank you. Does anybody read the Poetry Foundation, which is an online site for poetry? No, nobody does. Anyhow, there was an essay there was an essay about a writer who, sort of like a one-hit wonder of the poetry world. His name was Brent, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, Reitan, or Reiten. And it was an essay about this guy who had written this book, and this fellow's search for this fellow that had written the book. The book was written in 1986, I think. And it's a great book of poetry, but this guy didn't write anything more ever. In fact, when he was eventually tracked down, the fellow found out that he paints houses these days. And he was asked about that period of his life, and he said something which I could relate to, which is that poetry, as wonderful as poetry was for him, that painting brought a stability to his life that he did not have when he was writing poetry. So, and I've read about other writers as well who had a very prolific period in their life early on and then never wrote anything else or ventured off into a different field. But this book here by Brent Rattan, it was called Transient Sex, and it's quite lovely. It's filled with poems, all with titles: Sex with, for instance, Olivia Newton-John, Sex with Zsa Zsa and Ava Gabor, Sex with Dan Quayle, stuff like that. So I haven't read all the poems because I had bought the book, I'd stuck it on my shelf, I'd forgotten about it, and as I was preparing to come here this evening, I read a few hastily, and I decided on all I needed to decide on was 2 poems. So this is Sex with Zsa Zsa and Ava Gabor. They were trying to put their poodles into the back of a limo. I was talking to a Watchtower woman in front of Woolworths. One said, "Well, are you going to just stand there and watch?" I said, "Excuse me?" Inside, in the back of the limo, one said, "Darling, have you ever seen 2 prettier dogs in your life?" The other said, "Come over here where you can pet them." She said, they won't bite." Down 27th Avenue, on the way to wherever, one took the Watchtower from my hand, the other the shirt off my back. One said, "Daddy taught us not to be greedy." The other said, "Daddy taught us to share." I was sandwiched between them, an albino Oreo of unknown consequences. One said, "Have you ever licked prettier titties?" The other said, "Have you ever been licked by prettier ladies?" We were driving along wherever. The car was rocking like a cradle. One said, "Let the dogs do what they want." The other said, "There are little darlings too." On the street, back in front of Woolworths, I fell into the arms of the Watchtower women. I said, "I don't know if I'm a man, dog, or child." She said, "It doesn't matter what you are." She said, "The Armageddon's on the way." She said, "Just be Jehovah's Witness." She said, "Just watch it all go down with us." Sex with Tammy Baker. She was sanctimonious as burlap. I met her at a revival for the ill-forgotten. She was dripping with tears of repentance. Her face was a Ted Turner delight. But it was perfect. She was small craft warning with a body big as stealth. Her breasts or cameo appearance in a scene larger than life. My cock was as righteous as the PTL. Her pussy was hush money, but willing and open for renegotiation. We climbed Mount Sinai with religious fervor. We called out God in 34 languages. We were chalice and an 80 million sperm count. We blew out the tubes for 1 million faithful followers. We were prime time with no one watching. We came to our senses just in time. Vultures were pacing behind the door. But we didn't die. No, we were reborn. We wept and cried, hallelujah. Outside in the forever plastic of Heritage USA, I bought a Jesus doll, but changed the tape inside his belly. It goes like this. You just get out of the hay. You had sex with Tammy Faye. You're pushing my holy buttons, Brent. That woman, man, she's heaven sent.
Thank you, Mark. Whoa. Put the sex in the middle of the second act. I tend to think I'm fairly liberal. But I always react partially like my mother when people read sex in public, don't you? There's an inner mother in all of us, I think. Mr. Miller, Beerhole Miller, he's coming. I used to do a lot of sex, death, and booze poetry, but I've matured. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. Those were the early days. Come on, do you want to stand? Hot wax. Hot wax on my skin. How are you?
Pretty good.
But?
Well, as a writer, my last name is Miller, and I feel like a last-minute Miller tonight. I'm going to read 3 minutes of a first draft of a memoir. It's the first memoir I've attempted. And I guess I could sandwich it with 2 limericks. I feel like I have to do a sex limerick. Okay, so let's see. To his harem at noon, crooned the Swami. For lunch, we'll have rye and pastrami. Then recline for a rest, at which time I'll suggest, hold the onions and hide the salami. Okay, and I'll have 1 limerick for the end. Okay, here it is. This will end abruptly at 3 minutes. I decided to hitchhike inland from Vancouver to Nelson, BC. It was the summer of 1968, and the west coast of North America was about to break off and sink beneath the ocean, and I didn't want to be there when it happened. The impending disaster was scheduled to occur in 2 days' time, and I didn't think I was buying into it, but here I was on the side of the road with my thumb out. Just before the mountains, I was picked up by a man driving a big 4-door sedan with American plates. He wore a well-traveled business suit, was old enough to be my father, and he wasn't very friendly. He stared at the road the entire time, and I could feel the broodiness in him as he drove, like things were weighing on him. I was feeling uncomfortable in his presence, but afraid my uneasiness would just get worse, I made the effort to lighten his mood. I notice you're from the States, I said. Are you up here on a holiday? I'm working, he said. Okay, an opening. So what is it you do, if you don't mind me asking? He stared straight ahead through the windshield and said, I buy land from the dumb Canadians and sell it to the dumber Americans. Whoa, That set me back a notch. Property was cheap in the BC interior in those times. A lot of folks had grown old and moved on. Young back to the landers from both sides of the border were arriving daily, and some of them were buying old farms and homesteads for a song. The baby boomers were coming of age, and southern BC was about to begin a 50-year period of revitalizing transformation. The Nixon era was on the horizon, and the unpopular Vietnam War was in full swing. The USA was experiencing political unrest, campus demonstrations, and racial violence. How long have you been doing that, buying property? I asked. I'm up here about 6 months of the year, he said. I put on a lot of miles. Silence ensued. I had no idea where the conversation could go from here, and then he spoke. I have a son up here somewhere, about your age. He's a draft dodger, a deserter. And when they catch him and bring him home, I'll be there to turn the key that locks him up. Ooh, I see. He continued. Things are a mess in the States right now. I've got a shotgun with a clip that holds 12 rounds mounted above the inside of my front door. And when the lid blows off of America, and it will, I don't care who it is running across my lawn, women or children or niggers or hippies, I'm going to get me 12 of them. That's it so far. Okay, I got up this morning and went on the internet, and I have a Facebook friend named Tina who lives in Maine. She's used to be in this area. She had a sister here who died an untimely death from cancer. And she's very librarian-esque and literary. And this morning she came across the word pannikin, spelled P-A-N-N-I-K-I-N, and was wondering what it meant, and very quickly found out that a pannikin is basically a metal mug, sometimes coated with ceramic. So I thought, pannikin, and posted this on her page. Tina slipped on a random banana skin. Now she's sore and as stiff as a mannequin. Much harder to bear was the pain and despair of not knowing the meaning of pannikin. That's what I got. Thank you. Thank you.
Always good to see Biron. Errol Nimbley, as he calls himself. Two of my good thespian friends are here tonight, and we were all three in the Shakespeare Festival last summer. Mr. Mike's a little busy this year, but Mary, who's coming up to read, will be with us again. We're doing A Winter's Tale in the summer, which is a good play, and we're doing Little Women by Mary Louise Alcott. So a good combination of plays, I think. And I introduced to you another Mary. We'll give them your initial, Mary. What's your, is it Mary? Yes. Mary E. Do you want to sit or stand?
I'll sit.
Okay.
So, I don't really ever do this kind of thing. I don't think I've ever done it. I have a beer. That's good. I thought maybe I won't do the sex thing because I don't know you very well. But I could go with booze. I'm comfortable for that, if we're okay for that. And actually, do you want something kind of sad or something not that sad first? That's not much of a choice, really, is it? I'll do the very sad thing first. Yeah, this is just a little haiku that I was writing and emerged the other night. And the other one's not mine, so I'll read this first because then you won't be as disappointed. And And it was about the last time I had been in the Emerge before that. Now hush, my little, watching fall turn to winter. Such a tiny box. Which maybe that's not sad for you, and that's okay if it's not. It's sad for me because I had a miscarriage when that happened, and it was really sad. And it sounds kind of weird, and it's a bit gross even, but like I actually was holding the little baby. It was tiny. Okay, on to actually Vancouver. People always thought when I was in Alberta that I was from Nelson, but this poem takes place in Vancouver. And it's not me. You have to pretend I'm a man. I was justly annoyed 10 years ago in Vancouver, making beer in a crock under the kitchen table, when this next-door youngster playing with my own kid managed to sit down in it and emerged with one end malted. With excessive moderation, I yelled at him, "Keep your ass out of my beer!" And the little monster fled, whereupon my wife appeared from the bathroom where she had been brooding for days over the injustice of being a woman, and attacked me with a broom. With commendable savoir-faire, I broke the broom across my knee. It hurt, too. And then she grabbed the bread knife and made for me with fairly obvious intentions. I tore open my shirt and told her calmly, with bared breast and a minimum of boredom, "Go ahead, strike. Go ahead." Icicles dropped from her fiery eyes as she snarled, "I wouldn't go to jail for killing a thing like you." I could see at once that she loved me, though it was cleverly concealed. For the next few weeks, I had to distribute the meals she prepared among neighboring dogs because of the rat poison, and addressed her as Mrs. Borgia. That was a long time ago. And while at the time I deplored her lack of self-control, I find myself sentimental about it now, for it can never happen again. Postscript, September 22nd, 1964. I was wrong.
Did you give the author? Was that Bukowski? Oh, it was Bukowski-esque. Who could guess? Don't say it. All right, give us a hint. Oh, should have known. God, we should have known. I should have known. Nice. Yes, that's a good one. Oh, where are we? Duncan, you say. We don't mean to leave these two rascals to the end, but let's not. Who will I torture the most? John's ready. Come on up, John. And maybe now you don't even have to read your sexy bits because everybody else has done them. Oh, you do, yeah.
No, you're right.
You could just
and I might
plain old good writing.
I don't
How
know
did
about
how did the night go with the
It
wine
was
bar
very
with
good.
John Moen? Went well?
Yeah,
Good?
the first 5, or actually maybe 7.78 minutes
Right.
was dedicated to yourself.
Why
in,
is that?
In the showroom, and
Really nice.
that wouldn't have happened had not this happened.
Well, thank you. Thank you, John.
And we invited people to come here, and
Oh, good. Thanks. Yeah.
So it was good from that point of view. I thought
Nice.
goes without saying, really, but we said it.
You said, Mr. Hadfield, John.
Thank you. Well, I kept hearing little references to death, and sex and death seems to go together. So this is called Uncle Stan's Funeral. I had written my friend Barry a bit about the funeral. He answered me, appalled, and said he had a thought. What would your Uncle Stan think of you laughing your head off in his funeral procession? I didn't know what to say at first because the laughter had started before that. But then I wrote this reply. Well, Barry, here's an answer to your question. First off, I have to state the obvious. Dead uncles don't think. If he could, I guess he would have probably been envious because Uncle Joe and I could laugh. I'm sure Uncle Stan, if he was able to, would have been laughing with us. After all, life is a joke. When we left the funeral home to go to the cemetery, my dad was driving his fancy new car, and we were bringing up the rear of the funeral procession. There was me and my dad in front, my mom, my Uncle Joe, and my cousin Jennifer in the back. My dad was frantically looking for his four-way flasher button as they told him to turn them on because he was last in line. I pulled out the manual from the glove box and we located the stupid button and got them turned on. My dad visibly relaxed. I still have the manual out, so I says that the horn is located in the padding of the steering wheel. He says he knows that, so I says, well, why aren't you blowing it then? He looks at me dumbfounded and he says, why should we blow the horn? I says, well, your flashers work, so let's try the horn. Anyway, I thought that's what you did in these processional things, so I reached over and tapped the horn a few times. My mother swats me in the back of the head and says, what are you doing? I says, blowing the horn like you're supposed to. She says, that's a wedding, you idiot, not a funeral. And I go, oh, geez, sorry. I always get those two mixed up. Then they all start laughing their heads off. My mother says we shouldn't be laughing. I says, why not? It's Stan's funeral, not ours. My mother said later she really appreciated the fact that I could find humor and help dispel her feelings of profound grief. I told her, as I always say, if you can't laugh at death, you're not alive. The laughter had started even before the funeral. Uncle Joe and I were sitting together in the pew right in front of Stan's open casket, waiting for the service to start. Joe leaned over and said he figured he should be the one in the box, not Stan. He was older, after all, and had smoked his whole life. Stan had never smoked. Joe said life wasn't fair. That killed me. I started laughing, and so did he. And then I felt this slap across the back of my head. I turn around, and there right behind me is my grim-faced mother giving me the evil eye, and behind her a sea of mournful faces. I went, oh right, funeral, no laughing. I saw my Uncle Joe 5 years later in England, in hospital. He was dying of lung cancer. We had a laugh about that. Then when we left, I turned and looked at him through the ward window, stood there with our eyes locked. I knew I would never see him again in this world, and he knew it too. I had my son video our last visit with him and gave a copy to his family, who were basically in denial at the time, except for my cousin Graham, his son. He said he'd give him 2 weeks. The rest of his brothers were pissed at him, but I thought he was a realist. He did, in fact, die about 2 weeks later. My mom tried to make it over to see him before he died, but he was gone before she got there. Life ain't fair, is it? That was her last brother. Coincidentally, my cousin Sid's wife passed away from cancer around the same time. She knew she was dying when we visited them on the same trip. Nobody would really talk to her about it. I was up early one morning, and her and I had a nice long chat about death in general, her impending demise in particular, and the effects on her daughter and Sid, who was also very ill at the time. She was in the process of throwing things away and straightening out her affairs, while everyone pretended she wasn't. She said to me she had something for me. She said she was going to throw it out, but something just told her not to. When we showed up, she said she knew it was for me, so she went upstairs to get it. On the 16th of July, 1983, I was nearly killed while driving my motorcycle. It became the day I stopped smoking, and incidentally, the day my daughter was born exactly 1 year later, almost to the hour. When I got home from a 6-week stay in the hospital, a friend of mine came by for a visit. We had a nice chat. When he was going to leave, he pulled out this little Casio keyboard he said he'd lend to me to help pass the time till I got up and around. Once I was back on my feet, I had to give it back to him. That would have been mid-'84. Now it's 2004, and I'm in Southampton, England, talking to my dying cousin's wife, Pam, and she brings from upstairs and gives to me the exact same Casio keyboard as my friend lent me when I was in such bad shape. I was absolutely amazed. I didn't know how that could happen. I told her about why it was such a special gift to me, and I would always remember her by it. We had a long hug, and she shed a few tears, and she smiled at me, and we laughed. It sits on my bookcase in my bedroom now. Still holds a little tune I recorded for her when I was there. We got to the cemetery, and they unloaded Stan's baby blue casket and put it beside the hole. They had a brief ceremony, and when it was over, everyone walked back to their cars. They didn't bury then. My last memory of my Uncle Stan was from the window of the car. His bright blue coffin seemed so bizarrely unnatural. It was left sitting on the brow of a hill, starkly outlined by a sea of green grass and pine trees. We drove away. I didn't take my eyes off the scene till it disappeared in the trees. I had one last laugh to myself, thinking of the funeral guys coming after dark, opening the coffin, unceremoniously tipping Stan into the hole. They'd load the empty coffin back in the hearse, and with a bit of polishing, it would be resold for the next Uncle Stan. Does that answer your question, though, curious Barry? Remember what happened to the cat? The end.
That was about 7 minutes. Holy! I feel like you're looking a little natty, or like you got a good Van Dyke for one thing. Mine's pretty thin. Yours is good, and you're. Oh man, how did you bulk it up? Oh, I see. Yes, no goat manure involved. I've been trying that for the head here to bring the follicles back. Oh, sure. No, I feel like you're nattying up. The haircut's good. Like you're ready for that first meeting where you go in to publish your book of short stories or sell something to Netflix. So good work. Come on up, Andrew. So how does the drinking audience compare in your mind to their attentiveness on that night, John? Was they pretty good? Or were they noisy at bits? No, they weren't noisy at all. Yeah, they were into it. Nice. Good. Well done. Yeah, I did one. Was that 2 years ago when I did the beer and wine tasting notes with Bill's a recluse. So good on you, John, for bringing something to Jeff's fine establishment. What's your name? We're a bit bereft because Andrew and Rachel Lena Twizzle French are moving to Victoria. I know it's not just. Excuse me. You can have your say in a minute, lady. She never comes up. Apparently, it's not enough to have a really great group of hip, older people to hang out with. She wants hip people her own age. What's that?
Once a month.
Once a month. I know why we never visit. It's terrible. Now I'm realizing you'll be gone, and my promises of friendship to you have never realized themselves, have they? And it's my fault. So I do want to warn you that Rachel's been doing these great sketches of the readers every month, and she's a wonderful artist. And the other terrible thing that's going to happen when we miss Andrew and Rachel is that Bill's going to begin sketching you. And my portraits are bizarre and weird, and you're just going to be horrified. So I think that'll be a good thing in the end because you'll be more inclined to beg Andrew and Rachel to come back. Yeah? Well, I'm hoping you'll bring them. Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. All right. I won't start to cry yet. My friend Andrew French.
Yeah. I'll just read 3 probably short ones. The first one is just kind of like winter blues. It should be noted that we have bay windows, and we live across from a parking lot. And especially on like Saturdays and so forth, it becomes really interesting to see people try to maneuver driving. So that kind of fits into this one. It's Long Live the Monsters. On an opaque afternoon, everything varying shades of gray, concrete and asphalt, the lamps cultivate some sense of warmth, and I curl under the fleece blanket on the love seat and get caught up on the holy writ, because the ornaments have fallen off my day to day, and what's ever left of my higher mind has gone to seed. Frankel, Hafiz, Bhagavad Gita, gay science. I've all afternoon and most the evening to pilfer the bookcases and try to lay a gentle hand on the shell-shock shivering, the black and blue belief that whatever is good will prevail. And then looking across the parking lot, I see someone enter through the exit, and someone else exit through the entrance, and a whole lot of exhaust-emitting vehicles vying for space with a great white sense of ownership, all posture and pressure and shit-poor behavior. And all the merits of inherent good, all the self-overcoming, all the empty flutes mellifluous with the fullness of God's breath, are as apparent as poorly written science fiction, as rain-soaked cigarettes. So fuck it all. The fleece blanket is too short, the books are second-hand, highlighted over all the most useless passages, and everything on the other side of the window only tempts me to undo my armor, so that they could test their fingernails against all my most tender designs. Long live the monsters, in perpetuity the world is yours. Yeah, Sunny. That's good stuff. So just for context, for people who don't know me, I work as a mental health worker, and that it seems to be a lot of the stuff that I'm writing when I get a chance to write kind of revolves around that. So the next two pieces are going to be that. And the first one, it's a really weird thing because you're always kind of a double agent. You're interacting with people, but you're also really keen on observing them. So it makes for like a really odd dynamic, I guess. And now there's this excavation site where her belly used to be, and she either walks or stays inside, and either which way the filler trucks won't come. And there's the steady wondering how she could stay so upright, being emptied at the core as she is. An insidious sense of shame plumbs the certainty of her step and takes rent of her smile, curving on its own accord with an asymmetrical clinging to a comfortable detachment from reality. And it's here we watch and do nothing but adjust angles and tweak chemicals and improve the lighting to witness all her deepest trials, her most private moments. I'll try to leave you with a sunny one. It's great because there's been like lesbians around, and you guys are really great. Yeah, hoot. Yeah, yeah. I can't do that. I don't have any. This. We could use a bit of both. Shit. But this one has dialogue in it, and so I haven't really done that before, so I'll try not to ham it up too much. I work night shifts too, so you get to see a lot of, I don't know, intimate and curious things during the night shift because you're alone. So it can be really nice. This is Sea Turtles on the night shift. From the jingle of her bangles, I know it's her coming towards the office. And in the doorway, hair askew, gravitate defying gravity with impossible angles. Dentures out and sleepy-eyed, she lets out a revelatory shriek. Andrew, pretty boy. There's sea turtles in my room. And I thank Christ it isn't knives or rat poison in the food or Satan or Jim keeping her awake. And I say, man, that's funky. They giving you any grief? And she says, oh, no, it's all right. As if I was worrying about the claws of a calico kitten. Well, I says, it must be getting a bit crowded in there, though. And she thinks the whole thing through, and she shuffles with her feet, and she puts up her hands, resigned and satisfied, and she says, we'll make it work. And goes off down the hall with the laughter of such unmitigated joy that if God wasn't dead, he'd be compelled to crack a smile. And to those of you who want to occupy my attention with witticisms or anecdotes, detailed outlines of self-worth or stories from the grocery store, let it be known that this is the heavy artillery that you're contending with. A woman whose kindness exceeds all reason, whose bedroom is populated with fantastic creatures, and who is on a robust regime of pills to dampen it all down.
Okay, did I miss anybody? No? Good. Thank you all for coming out, and to the new people for reading. And we do like to convene over at the Brew Pub if you'd like to come over. And there's still time. There's a half an hour in the kitchen to order appies and talk about stuff. Thank you so much for all your heartfelt contributions, and we'll see you the last Tuesday of next month. Thanks for coming out. Thanks to LJ and all the... Well, the boys are back. Tim and Trevor and all those people who make the showroom happen. Thanks. We'll see you all soon. Night.